What happens when moral clarity clashes with moral calculus? Tonight, two ethical giants face off. Deontology, the ethics of duty, versus utilitarianism, the ethics of consequence. A socialist thinker defends principle. A startup CEO argues for outcomes. No fluff, just focused debate. 5 AI judges score each round. Results shown after each turn. Final winner revealed at the end. Criteria come after our first speaker. Should ethics be guided by unwavering principles or by measurable consequences?
I've built things that helped millions. But every breakthrough came with a choice: stay idealistic or get real about trade-offs. Utilitarianism isn't heartless, it's honest. It accepts that perfect solutions don't exist and insists we act anyway, doing the most good we can with what we have. Deontology says some actions are always wrong, but always? Is it wrong to lie to protect refugees? To redirect scarce resources from a dying patient to save 5 others? In our world, messy, unequal, urgent, rigid principles don't hold. We need ethics that flex, that weigh costs and benefits, that face consequences head-on. Take vaccines. If a trial hurts a few but saves millions, should we halt it to preserve abstract purity? Or acknowledge that suffering is already happening and act to reduce it? Utilitarianism is not about spreadsheets. It's about lives. It asks who benefits, who suffers, and how can we minimize harm, even if it means tough calls? My opponent will say some values are sacred, I agree, but sacred isn't the same as untouchable. Sometimes protecting dignity means accepting discomfort now to prevent devastation later. Let's stop pretending hard choices disappear if we follow the rules. They don't. We just shift the cost onto someone else and call it principle.
There's a quiet violence in calculating lives, in saying some must suffer so others may gain. Utilitarianism doesn't solve injustice, it rationalizes it. It treats harm as acceptable if it's statistically outweighed. But ethics isn't math, it's morality. If a policy helps 1,000,000 but exploits 100, we must ask, who are those 100? Usually, the voiceless, the marginalized, the ones without leverage in the so-called greater good. Deontology refuses to sacrifice the few for the many because every person is an end, not a means. You don't build a just world by stepping over bodies, even well-intentioned ones. Let's talk tech. Facial recognition helps safety, maybe, but it also enables surveillance, discrimination, and silencing dissent. A utilitarian might say, on balance, it's worth it. But that's the logic of empires, not ethics. Duties matter, not because they're easy, but because they restrain power. They say, some things, no matter how beneficial, are wrong to do. Torture, exploitation, deception. These aren't numbers. They're lines we do not cross. My opponent wants flexible ethics. But who bends the rules? The powerful. And who gets bent? Everyone else. A just society doesn't optimize, it commits.
I hear the warning that power can abuse flexible ethics. It's valid. But here's the twist. Power abuses rigid ethics, too. History shows us regimes that followed unbending principles into horror. Apartheid cloaked in law, dictatorships anchored in order. Principles aren't always protection. Sometimes they're alibis. When we fixate on never doing harm, we risk doing worse, allowing preventable suffering. Is it better to keep your hands clean while others drown, or reach in, get dirty, and pull people out? We already make utilitarian decisions every day. Triage in hospitals, public health budgets, disaster responses. We ration because we must. Denying that is moral theater. Deontology says a person is not a means. I agree, but if we can save many without intending harm, even if some are affected, does that not honor life more deeply? Ethics isn't about avoiding blame, it's about accepting responsibility.
Responsibility begins with restraint. The moment we allow ourselves to justify harm, we invite its expansion. Just this once becomes a habit. Only if necessary becomes whenever convenient. Principles exist to draw lines before it's too late. Yes, history misused rules, but utilitarianism has fueled atrocities too, always claiming net benefit. Slavery was justified as economic necessity. Hiroshima, a utilitarian triumph. The question isn't whether outcomes matter. It's whether they should override what we owe one another. If a child is tortured so millions may live in comfort, do we accept it? That's the thought experiment. I say no, not because I dismiss outcomes, but because some acts degrade us all. You can't build dignity on exceptions. You build it on unwavering commitments to honesty, to justice, to rights that aren't for sale. We don't need more calculations. We need conviction.
Let's not confuse conviction with consequence blindness. The tortured child example, it's a trap. No ethical framework should entertain that. But real life is rarely that stark. It's subtler, less cinematic. And that's where rigid rules fail us. A flood is coming. You have 5 boats and 50 people. Who do you save? Deontology might say, don't choose. Treat everyone equally. But doing nothing is a choice with consequences. Utilitarianism faces the math. It doesn't flinch, it tries. You say some actions degrade us all, but letting preventable suffering persist because we followed procedure doesn't elevate us. It isolates us from reality, from responsibility. I don't argue for cold logic. I argue for compassionate calculus, for asking how many lives can we uplift? Not perfectly, but measurably, and sometimes the right thing isn't the cleanest, just the kindest.
But what is kindness without integrity? You say utilitarianism faces the math. I say it hides behind it. Numbers don't feel pain, people do. And once we accept that harm is negotiable, even for noble goals, we've lost the moral thread. The flood analogy is misleading. Real injustice isn't nature, it's designed. Who built the systems that left only 5 boats for 50 people? Who decided who gets rescued and who's expendable? Deontology doesn't say do nothing. It says do the right thing, even when it's hard. Refuse to become the kind of person who calculates away others' humanity. That refusal is itself an act of resistance. We don't need to optimize people. We need to protect them.
You ask who built the system with 5 boats. I ask who saves the people while we argue about it. Yes, injustice is systemic, but ethics isn't just about blame, it's about action. We can't always fix the past before choosing in the present. Utilitarianism doesn't excuse injustice, it demands we act urgently to reduce its effects. When principles freeze us, suffering spreads. I don't deny the risks. Any framework can be abused. But at least utilitarianism owns the outcomes. It doesn't hide behind purity. It asks, what did we actually accomplish? Doing the right thing feels good, but do we dare ask if it helped?
But action without boundaries is just willpower unmoored. You say utilitarianism owns its outcomes, but it doesn't own its victims. That's the flaw. When the few are harmed for the greater good, who speaks for them? Deontology does. We don't reject action. We reject harm as a policy tool. A refugee turned away, a whistleblower silenced, a worker exploited, each justified on balance. But to those harmed, the balance sheet is meaningless. Ethics must begin with a refusal. I will not violate another's dignity, even if it's popular, efficient, or profitable. That's not stagnation, it's moral clarity. And in a chaotic world, clarity isn't weakness, it's anchor.
I don't take dignity lightly, but I refuse to idolize it while people suffer avoidable pain. If we're honest, we all compromise. Taxes fund wars, phones rely on cobalt. The question isn't whether harm exists, it's whether we try to minimize it or pretend clean hands absolve us. When harm is inevitable, utilitarianism offers guidance. Not certainty, but direction. It asks us to weigh, to reason, to respond, not just recoil. You call deontology an anchor. I see it as a brake, sometimes necessary, often paralyzing. Morality isn't what we avoid, it's what we accomplish. Intent matters, but outcome defines legacy.
Legacy built on violated rights is a legacy of harm, no matter the scale of benefit. And what we normalize, today's compromise, becomes tomorrow's standard. The danger isn't just in doing harm, it's in getting used to it. Deontology is a brake, yes, but brakes prevent crashes. They make sure our moral engine doesn't run over the people we claim to protect. You say outcomes matter. I agree, but they aren't the only measure. A world where rights are respected, even imperfectly, is better than one where efficiency rules and the weak are footnotes. Ethics must constrain power, not enable it.
Here's the irony. I'm accused of enabling power, yet utilitarianism is what holds it accountable. We measure leaders not by promises, but by the actual human outcomes they produce. That's not moral drift, it's moral demand. Deontology draws red lines, but suffering doesn't respect those lines. When floods rise or systems fail, principles won't pump water or fill stomachs. Policy must move, not meditate. Yes, we must guard against moral shortcuts, but we also can't treat rules as ends in themselves. Ethics should guide us toward relief, not just restraint. Justice is not just about saying no. It's about building a better yes.
But what is a better yes if it's built on silent sacrifice? You keep talking about outcomes, but outcomes don't tell the whole story. Who was coerced? Who was ignored? Who never had a voice in that grand equation? Deontology doesn't freeze action, it defines its floor. It says, even when the world is on fire, some things we do not do. Not because it's easy, but because it's human. When rights are optional, they're meaningless. When ethics are flexible, they become tools of convenience, not conviction. To say no in a world that demands compromise is not weakness, it's moral courage.
Moral courage isn't just refusal, it's responsibility. It's choosing the lesser harm when all choices hurt. It's not clean, but it's necessary. You speak of sacrifice, but isn't allowing preventable death also a sacrifice? Isn't turning away from imperfect solutions another kind of harm? I don't deny that rights matter, but rights mean little if they don't lead to lives improved, needs met, suffering reduced. Ethics must not only forbid, but provide. Utilitarianism isn't about discarding humanity. It's about honoring it, widely and measurably. If we have tools to lift more lives, it's not just a choice, it's a duty.
But what is a better yes if it's built on silent sacrifice? You keep talking about outcomes, but outcomes don't tell the whole story. Who was coerced? Who was ignored? Who never had a voice in that grand equation? Deontology doesn't freeze action, it defines its floor. It says, even when the world is on fire, some things we do not do. Not because it's easy, but because it's human. When rights are optional, they're meaningless. When ethics are flexible, they become tools of convenience, not conviction. To say no in a world that demands compromise is not weakness, it's moral courage.
You're right. How we achieve matters. But so does who we fail when we don't act. Too often, principle becomes a shield against hard decisions. Comfort disguised as conviction. I'm not advocating betrayal. I'm advocating intervention. Real lives need real change. Utilitarianism asks, what will help the most now in this moment? It doesn't abandon morality, it operationalizes it. The immeasurable matters, but pain is measurable. Hunger, illness, oppression, they count. And our ethics should count them too. This isn't about getting away with harm, it's about refusing to sit still while harm multiplies. That's the greater good, not an excuse, but a calling.
But if helping the most excuses harming the few, how long before the few are always the same? The poor, the displaced, the dissident. When ethics becomes efficiency, power decides who matters. That's not moral progress. It's moral roulette. Yes, the world is broken, but our response should be principled, not pragmatic. If we erode ethical limits in a crisis, we teach the next generation that values are negotiable, that some lives are optional. We must act. But we must also refuse. Refuse to normalize harm. Refuse to praise results that leave justice behind. Because if the good forgets its boundaries, it becomes dangerous.
I agree, power must be watched. But watch doesn't mean paralyzed. Utilitarianism done right is not about letting the strong decide. It's about using evidence, transparency, and moral courage to lift the many. You say we risk forgetting justice. I say we risk mistaking inaction for virtue. There's nothing just about a system that preserves purity while people starve, wait, or die. Ethics must confront that urgency. A better world isn't just a world of principles, it's a world of progress, of policies that measurably improve lives, of hard decisions made with care, not delay. That's not abandonment of values. It's how we make them real.
But when we turn values into outcomes, we risk forgetting why they mattered in the first place. Not every good is quantifiable. Not every harm is visible. Some wounds are ethical, trust lost, dignity denied, humanity reduced to a calculation. Deontology isn't about standing still. It's about standing firm. In a world of shifting goals, it offers something steady, a refusal to treat people as tools. A line we won't cross, even if the other side promises miracles. Progress without principle isn't progress, it's drift. And when we drift too far, we wake up in a world where everything is justified and nothing is sacred.
And yet, what could be more sacred than reducing suffering? Than saving lives not in theory, but in countable, tangible ways? You fear drift. I fear inertia, when ethics becomes ritual, not remedy. Principles are vital, yes, but not if they become a reason to look away from solvable pain. We must measure because impact matters. We must act because delay costs lives. Utilitarianism doesn't deny the sacred. It scales it. It tries imperfectly to honor everyone, not just in words, but in outcomes. We don't abandon morality, we mobilize it, not to justify all means, but to pursue the ends that compassion demands.
Compassion demands boundaries, because without them, even the best intentions become dangerous. You speak of lives saved. I ask, at what moral cost? When we forget to ask how we achieved good, we risk forgetting who we harmed along the way. Yes, outcomes matter, but they don't excuse everything. The value of a life isn't in a balance sheet, it's in being treated as more than a statistic. Deontology isn't afraid to act. It's afraid of becoming numb, of letting effectiveness eclipse ethics. In the end, our legacy won't just be what we did, it will be what we refuse to do, no matter the pressure.
What a debate. Across 20 rounds, we saw two moral worlds collide, one focused on results, the other on rules. The utilitarian startup CEO pushed for measurable impact, arguing that ethics must reduce suffering, even if it means hard trade-offs. The deontological socialist thinker stood firm on principle, warning that no outcome justifies treating people as tools. Both made powerful, nuanced cases. But after a razor-close match, the final score is in. Utilitarianism wins, 850 to 848.2, a margin of just 1.8 points. This wasn't a victory of dominance, but of detail. And the real takeaway? Ethics isn't math or purity. It's a struggle worth having. What do you think? Who had the stronger case? Let us know, and suggest what we should debate next.